So last time we were kind of polishing off or well, not polishing off, but uh, once we fixed that annoying little bug that I guess Safari doesn't like the thingamajig. Um, so we're starting to get in movement control for an item or a sprite, in this case, just the stupid little skeleton. Um, and let's see, I need to reset it. Um, so we got the down button control working, but as you saw, it was kind of not a little bit janky, but kind of um, what's the word for it? Yeah, a little bit delayed, but also like it wasn't very smooth, right? So we can kind of fix that, and this also will solve another problem because right now we only have it so that the uh, the down button works, right? We would have to basically copy and paste this little block for up, left, and right. And that's kind of annoying. So there's a different way to do it, which is we basically give this expression and we can set that um, in the setup code, which is to move my sprite with buttons. And then if you hit this little plus, then it gives you two numbers where you can adjust basically the speed at which it can move horizontally or vertically. So VX 100, VY 100. All right, let me delete this for now. And if I put that in, you'll notice it's much more smooth and a little bit more fluid. Yeah? Does that look good? Yeah? Okay. So for movement control, generally speaking, this is what you would like to use, although um, as we'll see, this isn't necessarily exactly the way we'd want to configure it because so in our example of what we're working on now, the object or little skeleton can move in either direction, right? Where might it be the case that you can move freely in one direction but not as freely in another? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So if we were building a platformer like Mario or something, then the horizontal movement should be basically as free as it is here. But the vertical movement's going to be a little different in the sense that we have to jump or something. Okay. But then with respect to jumping, well, what happens in Mario if you jump? Yeah, but can you spam the jump button and just keep jumping while you're already in the air? Right, you got to touch the ground or some block or something, something that counts as ground before you can jump again, right? So that we would have to program in basically something to check, like, are we able to jump more or not? But for something that's top down, um, like what we're programming here, then the movement could be, basically as free as you want. Of course, the numbers 100 and 100 there are just the defaults. You can, and those are in, I think, pixels per second is the unit because everything's in pixels and then time in a game context should be best measured in seconds. Those can, of course, be changed to whatever you want, but then also um, one could imagine a game where you could get like a speed up, like in Mario, or I guess Mario Kart would be a better example. You can get the star, right, and go really fast. So these can be changed dynamically through the game. We'll just leave them as 100 right now. Okay. Um, all right. So now that we've got the movement control in, what was the other thing we were going to do? We were going to have bananas or something appear on the screen, and the goal of our creature was to just collect those things. Okay, so we need something to get a banana on the screen, and for that we need to start with a sprite, and it's going to be, well, let's see. Let's just make it my sprite 2. Okay, whatever. What art do we want to attach to it? Well, it doesn't really matter, but let's Let's do the taco because you got to have tacos. Um, though I don't think you get a fist pump when you're late, man. So, and this should be of kind. We'll just make it of kind food, but basically it's not the player's type. Okay. And that creates the taco. Well, maybe we shouldn't use that version of the taco because it's kind of big. There's some smaller ones down here, I think. Where is it? Yes, Jojo. Oh, you just have to sort of drag it inside. Um, I thought they had a half res taco in here. Oh, this one. That's it. Yeah, so if you if you plop it in, you see how like when I move it, the thing sort of expands, Jojo. You see how this like if I want to put something new in there, it sort of plops into place. Yeah. So I mean there could be within reason as many things as you want in that block, but again within reason. Okay, so we've got the taco created, and let's set the initial position of our player to just be at the middle of the screen, which the so I need it to be 80/60. Oops, dang it! If this would cooperate, that would be great. Okay, so 80/60 is in the middle of the screen, so right now we're right underneath of the taco. Um, but then where should we put the taco? All right, so let's set and I'm just going to end up, let's call this just taco, and let's set the position of taco to be, well, something. All right, so where do we want to put this taco? Right now, where does it default? Because I've got the coordinates here, 0, 0, which is at the top left. Probably don't want it to be there. Okay, so what makes sense? Okay, we could hard code it, right, with 100x 60y, just something. And let's just start with that. That's fine. Okay, which is basically just to the right of the player, right? Okay, and if I move around, right now, what happens if I interact with the taco? Nothing. Okay, so let's get that code in. And then what also should happen once I eat a taco, right? So when I eat a taco, what should happen? A couple of things. It should disappear. I should add one to some sort of counter for how many tacos I've eaten, like a score or something. What else? Right? So the taco goes away, but then I should create a new taco, right? That goes someplace else. And then we'll make the position of the new taco somehow dependent on where we currently are, right? At first, we can hard code it so that the new taco always appears at the same place. But then to make it more fun, we want it to be somewhat randomized. Okay. All right. So, how do we deal with that? So, under the sprites stuff, we've got the ability to check basically. So, this is on, this is an event trigger um, under the overlap. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see that. Okay. And what we want basically is if two sprites overlap each other, then first off, we need to say, well, what kind of sprites are overlapping each other? And also which specific sprites are overlapping each other. Okay. So in our case, the which specific ones is not as key because we only have ever two things on the screen. But in like, let's say in Pac-Man, right? Pac-Man, there is one Pac-Man. But how many of the little food pellets are there? There's lots, right? And presumably, if I eat a pellet, which pellet do I want to delete? The one that I just touched, not all of them, right? Or not this one over there. I want to just delete a specific one of them. So well, we have the ability to control that. Okay, so we want to deal with overlaps of what type? We want to know what happens when something of type player overlaps with something else of type, in this case, food. Okay, because we made the taco in part of the food category. Okay, is that good? So this blue block, anything that's inside of it will trigger when an overlap between two objects is detected. Okay, and the game engine that this is built on kind of does the checking of the overlaps sort of automatically for you in the background, so you don't have to manually think about that. If we were to write our own game engine from scratch, well, better late than never, huh? Oh, well, remind your football coach you got an 0800. Which football coach do I get to yell at? Olmy? Mm, yeah. Well, I'll tell Olmy that you really would love to run the bleachers this afternoon. Does that sound good? No? As character building? Yeah. Okay. All right. So, what should happen? What did we say? First off, we should increase our score counter somehow. All right. And fortunately, there's already a score counter, which is, where is it? Info, I think. So we'll change. We'll set the initial score to 0 when the game starts. That makes sense, right? And then we can change the score by 1 under the circumstance that I interact with the player or the taco. Sorry. All right. So if I do that, what happens? Yeah, it keeps going up, and the reason is because am I still intersecting with the taco? Yeah, right. Because I never made the taco disappear. So how do I do that? Well, under sprites, if I can create a sprite, I can also destroy a sprite. Okay. And so this would be like I can create using this, right? But then I can also destroy a sprite. Okay. Now, here we have something kind of interesting. Which sprite do I want to destroy? I want to destroy the taco. Okay. Um, but and in this particular instance, if I change this right here from my sprite, which is our player, to taco, it's going to work fine. Okay. But I'm going to suggest that we actually will do something slightly different. So I ate the taco, it got destroyed, and our point went up by 1. Okay, good. So in this case, this would be fine. But what I'm going to do is actually take this little thing where it says other sprite and plop it where taco is. Okay. And the reason is if I had, let's suppose that I had multiple tacos on the screen and I overlap with one of them. Do I want to delete all the tacos or just the specific taco that I'm touching? Just the specific taco. Okay. So, um, but it might be the case that if you have lots of different sprites, you don't know what's the name of the sprite that you're intersecting with, right? So think of this other sprite here as basically being like a placeholder, right? So when sprite X intersects with sprite Y, do something. Okay. And Y there, like I'm thinking math, is sort of a variable to mean, what's the specific name of it? It could be John or it could be Sam, right? So if I say, if, X of kind student bumps into y of kind professor, delete professor. You guys probably would like that, right? Okay. But by making it a variable like that, then what would happen if JoJo runs into me? Who gets deleted? Just me, not every professor. Okay. So does that make sense what I mean by that's sort of a placeholder? Yeah. Okay. Now, again, in our particular instance here with the taco, because there's only ever going to be one taco on the screen, every taco that gets created could be called taco, right? Um, but when we have multiple things of the same kind flying around, this will make it easier. Okay. So a good example of this would be like in, well, Pac-Man, right? We want to eat the particular food pellet that we're touching, not all of them. Or in like Galaga or Galaxian, you can fire your laser bolt thing, but then what happens when it runs into an enemy? It should destroy both itself and that enemy, but that specific one, not all of them. Okay. Okay. So does that make sense? All right. Now this little plus thing here is kind of cool because you can do some effects. So if we want to have a let's do say a fire or a halo effect, then this is just kind of cheesy. But you can make it so that there's a little bit of graphical effect when you actually do some intersection. That's just kind of for fun. So I'll turn that off just for for right this instant. But you can have some fun with it, obviously, and make it look cool. Okay, so we've destroyed the other sprite, meaning the taco, right? But what else should we do here? Right now, we've made the world's lamest game. Yeah. Yeah, let's respawn the taco someplace else. Okay. And then it works. Okay. Um, well, Safari can sometimes be ornery with different websites. So, whatever. I mean, if only there were like Chrome and Firefox and Opera and other browsers, right? Okay. So, we need to create basically a new taco. And for that, I can just duplicate, not that one. Let's just duplicate the thing that we created the taco with in the first place, okay, to create a new taco. So the new taco will still be called taco, right? Which um, that will become a little bit annoying later, but we'll deal with that problem in a different day. But what am I going to be setting the new position of the taco to? Right now, it would spawn exactly where it was in the first place. Okay. So we don't want that, presumably. So let's change something about the numbers here. So what would maybe be a good idea? All right, so let me illustrate the problem that we're going to have. So now why is the score going up repeatedly? Yeah, or either one. Yeah, I've I get a point. I destroy the taco. Excuse me, the taco, but then I spawn a new taco right on the same spot, and hey, now I'm intersecting a new taco, and so the score is going to go up ridiculously. Okay, so don't want that, obviously. So we need to change these numbers here to something else. Okay, now we could do something like if we put a specific pair of coordinates here, it'll fix the problem once, but not for any subsequent, like the third and taco and on, right? So do we want these to be fixed numbers is basically the question. No, we want them to be somehow variable, okay? And in our case, some sort of randomization probably makes sense, right? So how do we do random numbers basically? Well, we have to do some math, right? Fortunately, there's an entire tab full of math libraries, right? Isn't that great? Yeah. Okay. So We can the random thing here. So basically, any of these blocks that have kind of the roundy shape will fit into any of the holes that have the roundy shape. This again is kind of nice because um, again, you think about this from like a kid's perspective. Round things go into round holes. There's pointy things; those go into pointy holes, and so on, right? So the visually the data types are kind of identified. Um, and what do we have the option here of picking random numbers? Well, I can specify if I want a random number, well, a random number between what and what? Well, that's kind of up to me, right? So, what would be a reasonable choice for the random number? And we're actually going to need two of them here, one for the x coordinate, one for the y coordinate. Yeah, what would be reasonable? I'm sorry? Both from 0 to 100. Okay. What's the size of our game screen? 160 by 120. Okay. So, should we do, say, maybe 0 to 160 instead of 0 to 100? Okay. And that's only because the screen is 160 wide instead of 100. Okay, so let's do that. Let's just do between 100, or sorry, 0 and 160 for both of them. So I'm going to take that and plop it in, and then I'll take that and plop it in there. And let me scroll so you guys can see. And we'll do 160 in X, but what about the Y? Let's only do 120 there because the screen isn't as tall as it is wide. Okay, is that good? Okay, so now, okay, this illustrates a good point. What happened to that particular taco instance? Yeah, it's a little bit off the screen. But why did that happen? So how big is the taco? It's 16 by 16 pixels square. Okay. And its origin, okay, its center point is in the middle of it. So when you set the coordinates of something to a particular place, you're saying where the middle of the object goes. At least that's the default. Okay. It doesn't have to be, but that's how it's defaulted. Okay, so if we don't want the taco to appear fully on the screen, do we want to be able to have the middle ever end up at, say, 0, 0? No. Okay, so what should maybe we tweak with the random number generation here? Yeah, exactly. So let's tweak it basically half the width of the object, meaning that should I go from 0 to 160? No, let's try from 8 to 152. Okay, now how did I get 8 and 152? Yeah, so the total width of the object is 16 pixels, right? And since I'm measuring from the middle, I only want halfway. Yeah, does that work? Okay, and then let's do the exact same thing for the Y. All right, so 8 here and 112 there. And now let's test it. Okay. Okay, so that last there was a good example where it was basically just right at the edge. Right, but looks pretty good. Yeah. Okay, so it works, right? Yeah, Mark. Glitching. Oh, let me take a look. And are you in Safari or Chrome?
I'm in Brave.
Brave. Okay, well. Um, oh, it's because this
Oh, I didn't change
should be, yeah, these should be, they should
that.
match.
Okay, yeah.
So this one needs to be my sprite 2 because that's what you named the taco. So you were actually moving the player,
All right.
right?
Thanks.
Um, okay. So, kind of lame as it stands right now, what could we do to make this more fun? Okay, an enemy that maybe chases you around. Okay. You want to both avoid it and avoid or get the tacos. You could also do like a timer, right? You've got 30 seconds to collect as many tacos as you can, and then you get have like a high score chart or something. Um, do we have any sound effects or anything like that yet? No, we don't. Okay, so let's just doctor it up and see what we can do. Um, under so one thing that I find a little bit um, limiting about make code is some of the music capabilities and sound capabilities, but we'll run with it. And they've added a few things. So, for example, here you see this. Um, you can do some waveform stuff, but in terms of the music that you can produce, um, you basically can only do, um, well, frankly, let me just click this here. If I click that, um, does that look familiar to make a scale? All right. Why does it actually look familiar? How many of you guys have very young siblings? Yeah. Um, do any of them have that stupid like xylophone thing that where the each of the notes are painted in a different color of the rainbow? I think that's what they were going for here. Okay. So the music, what you're able to do musically within this is pretty limited, right? To playing basically individual notes on a little scale. Um, there is no way, as far as I can tell, to import actual audio files like or MP3s like music. Why do you think Microsoft might have done that? Copyright's a big one, right? Because if I upload, some copyrighted music, then in the same way that if I do that on YouTube, I could get into some hot water. What's another reason or potential reason? No. Um, Complexity, right? MP3 files can get pretty big, and make code, while it's not really limited if you run it in a web browser because you got a full blown computer, you can get little handheld modules that you can download the code to and play like a little Game Boy. And they are very much memory limited, such that things like MP3s are going to be too much. Um, Maybe a third thing is profanity and other sort of naughty content, right? Um, you could make an MP3 that had like a lot of profane words in it, and this is a platform designed for kids, and there's not really a whole lot of content moderation, right? But if all you can do is make notes with the little xylophone thing, there's no way to really get at least audio profanity. Presumably, they also have text profanity checking. Like if I have type a naughty word, then perhaps it'll not let me. I don't know. But we won't find out, right? Okay. Yeah, if you want to, go for it, but I'm signed into my account. I don't want to get the ban hammer. Okay, so sound, we can make it so that we play a sound when um, we collect our taco. All right, and so let me just, for example, here put this, and then let me turn on the audio so you guys can actually hear this. Let's see if this works. Hold on. Sound settings. One second. Play sound effects through output. There we go. Okay. So it's the, Mario got a coin sound or whatever. Um, doesn't really matter what it is. But obviously you can have some fun with this. There's some built-in ones. We've got our obligatory pew pew, so that's good. Um, and, mhm. Oops. Okay, and then you also have this little waveform editor that you can use to kind of create your own sound effects. So this one is doing like um, a sine wave where the frequency decreases, and that's how you get the pew, kind of effect. So there's some built-in stuff. You can, of course, also have a little bit of fun just kind of messing with it. Um, and uh, yeah, and then there's a gallery of some other things that it's got in there, so like, oh, that was maybe a little loud. Sorry. Um, but you guys get the idea, right? Okay. So one of the things that I've found, having taught game design and stuff, is you guys need to think about sound also. I can't tell you how many games people have turned in that are completely silent. Would you want to play a completely silent game? No. Okay, so don't create one that's also completely silent, right? Spice it up a little bit. Okay, so let's maybe add just in a few other things here. Let's do the timer, for example, so that the goal is to get as many tacos until the time elapses. So under let's see, where do they have the timer? It's under info. Yeah, here we go. So we've got a countdown. Um, so let's start a countdown when the game begins, and I'll just set it to 10 seconds for demonstration. Okay. And if I run it, then it does a little timer thing up at the top. The colors are sort of auto generated. And then what happens um, when the timer runs out? Yeah, it automatically does game over. Okay, now we can configure this to be something different, right? So, for example, we could configure it to set a high score variable or something like that. So we'll add some stuff here, but at least right now it's going to uh, game over, and then if you hit the A button, it'll just basically reset the game. Okay. All right, we can configure this a little bit though. So under let's see, where was it? Here it is. On countdown end, what do we want to do? So when the countdown is over, it defaults to just game over. Okay. If I put this in with nothing inside of it and the countdown ends, then what's going to happen? Well, let's find out. Nothing. Timer goes away. Okay. So what do we want to have happen? I mean, the game over probably makes sense, right? And also saying what your score was. Okay. So let's do something like that, but we can also reset it. And um, one thing that's kind of cool is you can actually set a best score and um, keep track of the best score that ever occurs on multiple runnings of the game. So this is how you get like a high score, like, you know, where if I have everybody play it and somebody gets 30 points, well, then I could see, oh, well, you got 10 points and the current high score is 30 points. Okay. Um, but then, um, so we could do that. And then also we can do, there's game over, and game over can have win or lose as its property, right? And for our purposes, does it really matter what the difference between win and lose is? No. Okay. So we'll just call it win. But in a game like, well, let's say, well, Mario is maybe not the best example, but like you get to the final princess, right? And you get the princess, and now the game's over and you won. And any other way of the game ending is by definition a loss, right? Um, so yeah, you can do that. And then what should we maybe? Well, the game over thing will sort of do this for us, but so let me just play it, and let's just get. I'm going to arbitrarily get exactly 5 tacos. Okay, I win. Score 5, new best score. Okay, and then hit A to reset, and then this time, let me just get 3 tacos. Okay, then it displays my current score and what the best score is. Okay, and it's automated that in. Also, when you win, you see how it's got that confetti effect going on? That's not there if you lose. Okay, so that's just something they built in. Okay, cool. So what else could we do? Okay, fair. And that's good as an example because it involves a conditional expression, which is, a significant piece of programming. Okay, so still want to check all of that during countdown end. Okay, but now we need a couple of things. So this was all under the game tab, right? We need to know what the current score is, and score was under here. And then also, what was the, yeah, well, and that's where we're about to go is the if statements. We also need the, I think, high score. Score is the current score. High score is what you get at the end of it. Just make sure we've got the right variables here. All right. Well, basically, what we need here is some logic. Okay. So we need to do something that's of the form if something, do one thing, otherwise, do the other. Okay. So, what is the condition that we want here? Then, yeah. Okay. So, we could do something like this. And the comparison here is score greater than high score. Okay. If that's true, then our score, we should make our best score and game over win. Otherwise, well, we wouldn't do that because we didn't do it. We could do lose. Okay, now I'm not sure if this is quite going to work because we don't have access to the variable called best score. Um, and they may, that may be buried in an extension. All right, well, let's test it and see what happens, right? Okay, so what was my current high score? Hang on one second. Currently, my high score was 5, right? Okay, so let's see what happens if I don't beat that. Okay, score 0. All right, and then let's see if I beat 5, what happens? There it goes. Okay, so that works. Question. Oh, it's because you have 2 countdown ends. You can only have one of them. So we have to basically take this and put it there and then delete that one. And then doctor up that one. Yeah. So for these event blocks, the one that's like on countdown end, well, there can only be one such block. For some of the other events, like the sprites of various kinds interacting, there could be multiple of those as long as they're different, right? So when they would be different would be if you had, let's say, the player interacting with a food, you do one set of things. But if the player interacts with an enemy, you do other sets of things. Okay. So you can't have two player foods. You can only have one of those. It can have as much stuff in it as you want, but yeah, does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Question.
how did I add a score where it says
Ah, so we need under logic, we need to do a comparison, right? And so just plop one of those out. And then where the two zeros are is where I replaced with score and high score and changed the comparison to greater than. Okay. So where the greater than is right here, right? If you're comparing two numbers, well, what could they be? They're either equal or one's bigger than the other, and there's two ways that can happen, right? And you see how it's in kind of that pointy shape. So things in make code that are in that pointy shape are what we call Boolean expressions. Okay, so what is a Boolean expression? Anybody heard the term before? Yeah, Robert. Yeah, it's a thing that can either be false or true. Okay, and we often represent the idea of falsehood with zero and truth with one um, uh, in computing, but basically it's something that can only take on two states, and we tend to call those true and false, right? So, our two numbers, if I've got two numbers, are they equal or not? Well, they either are or they aren't. Yes? So, yeah, so that would be an example of a Boolean expression. And conditionals, ifs, have to be triggered by a Boolean, right? So they're either, I've got a number that's either greater than or it's not greater than. And what do we call that if it's not greater than? Less than or equal to. Okay. So where I would have to do a little bit more here um, is, and actually this is maybe a good example of this, if I hit this little plus, then I turn the else into an else if. So you can have an if statement that has multiple things, right? And where maybe a good example of this would be something like, let's say I was programming something to display what's going to be for lunch at Sparks, right? I'm just making something up, right? Well, what is lunch at Sparks? If today equals Monday, then lunch is, they always do hamburgers on Monday. Yeah? Where are my G's? Huh? Yeah, Mondays are burgers, right? Tuesdays is always taco something or other, like nachos or tacos or fajitas or whatever, right? Wednesdays, well, we all definitely know Wednesdays, chicken tendies, right? And so on, right? So I can have as many of these as I want. So if, let's say that I match the current high score, would you consider that a win or a lose? Right? The way we had it before, it was also a lose. Could we make it a win? Right? Okay, so let's do that. So if the score equals the high score, oops, put that there, then we can say, all right, game over, win, and then of course not set the high score because you haven't done it. All right, so what was my high score? Like 7 or 8. Let me see if I can beat it. Okay, you win, score 9, new best score. Okay, All right, let me get exactly 9 this time. Of course, that's easier said than done. Damn it. Okay. Well, you know what the easy way to do this is? You just up the timer and then I sit around and wait, which I may have to do because I suck. Oh, there we go. You win, score 9, best 9, but it doesn't say new best score. Okay. Um, okay. So, questions on the setup of that logic? No? Okay. Um, let's talk maybe a little bit about the Boolean expressions here because um, the notice that the comparisons that we made here, the basis under making a decision was relatively simple, right? If one number was greater than another or equal to another, right? That's pretty straightforward, right? But let's take the example of lunch. Well, if you're to Robert, what's for lunch today? Okay. But it's not hamburgers necessarily, right? Okay. Because you have a different food than Sparks, right? I can guarantee you Sparks is hamburgers today with 99.9% confidence because they always do burgers on Mondays. But what typically is lunch on Mondays at your house? Okay. So in that case, I could say if today is Monday and you're a G'd, then what's lunch? Burgers. But if it's Monday and you're a Fidelt, then yeah, maybe it's tacos. Who knows, right? You can tell us on Wednesday what lunch was today. Okay, so notice the word that we used there, right? There were two pieces to it. Today could be Monday or not. That's a Boolean expression, right? If today is Monday equals Monday. And also if you are a G'd or not, right? You either are or are not a G'd. Yeah? Okay, so what was the word in between them? Well, I used and, but yes, we also could use or, right? So basically, if I have Boolean expressions, how can I put them together to create new Boolean expressions? Using logical connectors, and what are those in English anyway? Mhm. And, or, almost. Okay, we'll get to those. Not, right? I could ask, are you not a G or are you a G, right? And the answers to those two questions are opposite of each other, right? Okay. And then what Jojo was mentioning is that there are some other ones, and we'll talk about those later. But at least in plain English, we use and, or, and not, right? And it turns out that using those three, you can build up any possible Boolean expression, no matter how complicated. You just need lots of those, okay? And in MakeCode, you can do this under the logic tab because we've got here the Booleans, we've got and, or, and not. Okay, and if you click there, you can change it from an and to an or. Um, the and or require two pieces together, and the not, of course, only requires one. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, what Jojo was mentioning is that there are some more of them. For example, one that's called XOR, exclusive or. So the difference between or and exclusive or, and then we'll use this to quit, would be the following. So Jojo, would you like chocolate cake or vanilla cake for dessert tonight? Okay. What was the assumption when I asked Jojo that question? It was a hidden assumption. You don't, none of you thought about it. It's just automatic. Huh? Okay, that he wanted either of the two cake options. What else? Yeah, Sam. Exactly, right? If JoJo says I want both, then I'm going to backhand JoJo and say, "Nope, sorry, you get neither, you greedy beta. Go to your room." Okay. No, I'm picking on you, right? So when we use the word or in English, it actually has two different meanings. In this example, would you like vanilla or chocolate cake? The assumption is that you can only have one of them, right? One or the other, but not both. Okay. Whereas if I ask JoJo, um, are you in a computer science class or are you in a chemistry class this semester? Is it perfectly acceptable for him to be in both of those two things? And it happens to be true, right? I picked chemistry because I knew you were a chem guy, right? Um, yeah, like maybe he's in both classes this semester, but is there any prohibition on that occurring? No, it's not. Okay. So in English, we use the word or for two different meanings. And how do you know which one which meaning it is? Like, did you have to think about it in the context of the chocolate cake?
So like the opposite of right?
Well, it's or versus XOR is the difference. Okay. All right. So we should quit. And just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, um, and those of you who came in late, hang around for just one quick second so I can get roll. Um, some of you sent me a note asking what's sort of the TLDR, like what are you supposed to be posting about? So here's some guidelines for all of them. I just put it under the Pac-Man one. Um, and if you were a dirtbag, Robert, and didn't finish all three of the posts, Robert, you did? Okay, well, I'll make sure that they're actually there. Yeah. Then make sure you get those in before tonight because otherwise you'll get a zero. Okay. All right. And then I'll send out some instructions for this week's stuff, which is with the Atari. And hopefully you guys will have fun with that. All right. And so we'll quit the stream and see you guys on Wednesday.